I saw the future because I had seen it already in LA. I'd already seen it in action, and I'm like, okay, we're ahead of it. Let's make this happen. Let's get up there, and we have an opportunity to help people and give people safe access to medicine that might not be able to access it, and throughout, without having to use the illicit market or other means that aren't quite as comfortable. And our whole background has been really trying to just promote having really educated staff and educated facilities so that people can come and really feel like they're making the right choice for themselves.
Yeah. I'd imagine there are some specific challenges to running a cannabis business, financially and even maybe from a cultural standpoint, integrating into the community. Could you share some of your experience with that?
Yeah, so financially, I think one of the things people don't understand about cannabis businesses is we're the most heavily taxed business that there is, first of all. Second of all, we have essentially no write-offs. So like traditional businesses can write off any means to run the business, utilities, payroll, rent, any of these things. Sponsorships, donations to local charities and things. None of that is a write-off for us, and people don't typically know that. So not only we have heavily taxed, but then any money we spend in that regard is also taxed. So money that we use to sponsor Boys and Girls Club, whatever, it's those we're taxed on that money. So, but it's just the way that it is currently. If you want to have a cannabis dispensary, it's just how it has to be until things are deregulated or it changes on a federal level. So
Summer, in our pre-discussion, you mentioned all these causes that you contribute to, and personally, as just a lover of entertainment in the county, I have seen stage after stage sponsored by Sacred Roots or Pure Life at the Golden Road Festival, out at Surreal this summer at the festival that Kilton Cork put on. Really throughout the year, it looks like you guys are putting your money where your love is. How do you choose which activities to give to, and tell us a little bit about what that means to you?
Okay, so I think that we want our cannabis dispensaries to feel like a community environment. So we try to really hone in on events that bring the community together. So we're big music lovers, so anything music is kind of obvious for us. We also like to kind of, support the underdogs in terms of when we see people in the community, such as yourself, doing like art cancel things, or Save the Graves, which is literally just a group of people who are working for free to make sure that the Placerville cemetery stay, clean and upkept and fixing. So whenever we find people that are just kind of desperately doing things for their own love and and their own just feeling of represent, that's the word I forget, but for the community, we're really drawn to those people because we understand that. We were at a time very much like unsupported by the community and unsupported by the powers that be, and trying to do things just off the power of community. So those are the things we're drawn to.
Yeah, Mike Roberts, who is the champion of Save the Graves, is going to be on the show next month, and their big event is October 20th, I believe.
I think it's the 21st.
21st, okay, yeah. And he actually told me, because he has gone hat in hand to every business around town and the county, and he actually had told me like more than a year ago that he had come to you guys and you were like, yeah, we're supporting Save the Graves. So that's super cool.
It's really beautiful. It's really beautiful,
Yeah.
To your previous question, one of the landscapes we did see that's been different here in El Dorado, has changed in the last 10 years was the Welcome Arms we were able to open our second store with in Placerville City.
Yeah.
The mayor was there, the police chief was there, and it was really nice to.
Yeah, it was a very different experience. So Pure Life opening very much martial law, not really having any permissions, asking for permission, eventually being granted by the Board of Supervisors, where Placerville was, hey, we want dispensaries, come apply. So we did, and then here you go. And like you said, the police chief was there, and the mayor, and everyone's backing us, and it was just such a different experience. It's just like you walked in and just opened your doors. And Pure Life again is
great to work with.
Really nice. Great. And can you say a word or two about the cannabis fund as part of that?
So part of that was we were able to negotiate in the tax that they do collect from us, 1% that Annie Aubrey, the owner of Chuck's, myself, two citizens of Placerville, and police chief and then the city manager sit on a board, and we all decide how that 1% is spent. So this last year, we funded a new pool deck at the city pool, repairs on the slide, a new repairs to the bathroom downtown. The Fire Safe Council got a grant, an allotted amount of money, and then we had $15,000 in grants that were towards high school students, and then $15,000 that were open grants that we're about to go review the applications that came in and allot those funds to. And it feels good to be able to see where those go. And
it is. And once a year, people can apply for those through the city, Placerville City Council. So you apply. I think they're closed for this year.
Yeah.
But the next year, if you want to come in and you're like a Save the Graves person or someone that's like, I just need a little bit of money to keep this thing afloat, the council does get to meet and decide. And originally, we weren't going to be part of the council. And we really fought. We said, well, we'd love to be part of it. We're collecting the tax money. We'd love to just put it back, our input into what we also feel passionate about. But they selected a committee that consists of just 2 regular people. And I think, is that going to change next year, I think?
no, it'll still be
It's going to stay the same?
citizens,
Yeah, so just 2 regular people, council member, and then, of course, the 2 representation from the shops in City of Placerville, so.
Excellent. I guess I have a question. We touched it for a minute, but I guess I would love to. This program is concerned primarily with the cultural aspects of living in this town. It's called Placertopia for the reason that I do think this is a kind of ideal community to do business in, to make art and music in, to enjoy life, to raise a family. So if you guys could talk a little bit about that decision to come back, but more from the family standpoint.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we, having lived in LA for the decade that I did, I never really thought about leaving until I had my son. And then I was like, oh, I don't know. There's certain things about this area that you don't appreciate as a child that as an adult you absolutely are like, this is just an amazing place to live and to raise family, and the schools are great, and there's just more room to move around in the river, and just all sorts of natural things that you can access here. So that was big. But I would say, moving back, having seen it as a child, and now like the cultural explosion in just in Placerville and El Dorado County in general is just amazing. I remember what Placerville as a child just felt like, a dusty old antique shops, and there was a theater, and that's usually why we came here. And now it's just, with the green room and just boutiques and the restaurants and all that sort of thing. It's really a fun place, I think, to grow up in also too,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and for us also, like, it was a place that we both grew up, and we both, I know, had good upbringings.
Yeah.
So it was nice. It was good it felt like the right place to be. I wouldn't want to raise my family anywhere else.
That's wonderful. We had a conversation with Charlie Downs a few shows ago, and he talked about that a community that has attractions for younger people is always going to not just survive but thrive nationally. And I commented that when we arrived in town, we were living in the county for 12 years, but we moved into town only 2 years ago. But I was just astounded by how many young people, and I say young because I'm a boomer, but in their 30s and 40s, had moved back to town like you did, had grown up here, gone out of town for college and post-college years, and then moved back here to start their families and brought all their talents back to town.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. And so, and I also don't want to underplay the importance of the green room. That the green room appeared, with Jen Ty's vision and all her people just a couple of years ago, and kind of picked up the baton that had been carried by the Cosmic Cafe for several years, and these events that just inspired a whole generations of younger musicians who had grown up in high school coming to all ages shows at the Cosmic, and now are running these bands like Find Yourself or the Phantom Spires, and that the shows that we see here, and the shows that you guys sponsor are all ages, It's super cool. There's people bringing their kids. There's tons of boomers. There's everybody in between, especially, where we came from in the Bay Area and then previously in New York. A lot of the kind of general trend would be that 20-somethings wouldn't be caught dead at shows with boomers or something like that. And we really don't see that here, yeah?
Right. That was a good mesh of the community. It feels like everyone's welcome everywhere, and places like the Green Room are a great hub for the community. And that's why we try and be here. You'll see us with our kids as many places as we can also. And, I think it's important for the youth to have access to music too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of taking your kids and not taking your kids, maybe we just finish up with the fact that I happen to know you attended Burning Man this year. So I'm an old burner from the 90s. My wife and I attended from 94 until 2002. So we watched the community there grow from 1,500 the first year to 35,000, 60,000, and 70,000 in the mid and late 90s. What was your experience like this year? It did make international headlines because of the rainstorm, and my slightly snarky quip was when people got stuck was, oh yeah, don't bring 60,000 vehicles to a dry lake bed during climate change.
Yeah, no, that's where Kelly and I actually met in 2007.
No way.
Yes, through mutual high school friends, actually. Yeah, so it's always had a place in our heart. I like Burning Man. It was great this year. I think the one thing is that it required that you just slow down. And I'm kind of a slow mover through Burning Man anyway. I really like the art aspect of it. I'm not a late nighter typically, but that's all that it was. It was just inconvenient. That's it. Everyone just got set back a day, but everyone just relaxed. You got to know your neighbors really well. You had to walk around with bags on your shoes, but that was just about it. No art cars for a while.
It made you focus on your community that you brought with you. You hung out with your people at your camp, or your people that were directly camped next to you that you might have passed.
And there's no group that was ever going to be better prepared than the radical self-reliance requirements of Burning Man. Like, we had everything we needed, Yeah,
there's a 35-page survival guide to go. So
we had our water.
Got you. Yeah, if you were ill-prepared, you were ill. It was probably a travesty, but everybody's over-prepared, and the community came together. It was fun.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Maybe one of my better years.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kelly, Summer, we really appreciate you coming on the show. We appreciate greatly everything you do for the arts and the cultural community here, and for bringing medicine to the people. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Get it?
Okay, and we're back. I think we're back. And we have with us today a special guest. She had the shortest commute of anyone on the show today. Please welcome the owner and founder of the Green Room, Jennifer Ty. Jen, this is so cool because we've been, of course, plugging events at the Green Room since the show began, and we're so happy to be hosted here. And it was always my desire. I've done a few podcasts, but knowing the Green Room and how welcoming it is and what a great room it is to do stuff in, I pictured this stage, and I pictured a live show in the spirit of, dare I say, possibly a little more conservative approaches like Prairie Home Companion, but also shows like West Coast Live. And, shows that I actually appeared on West Coast Live in San Francisco, and it was kind of this same format. It's a talk show. There's live music. Today we're going to have Adrian Beatty on the show as a live musician. But the hometown feel, and I couldn't think of doing it anywhere better than the Green Room. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you for being here.
So there's plenty to talk about with you. Why don't we start for a second with your recent capital campaign, which I was happy to contribute to through Honeycomb, I believe it's called?
Yes.
Can you just tell us how that worked? And it was a really cool new model for funding small organizations that need funding.
Yeah, it's a credit company called Honeycomb Investments, and they focus on community-based fundraising. So it's not a gift, it's not a donation, it's an investment with a payback period and an interest rate. So we were able to raise our minimum, and we're putting that money to good use right now. We're doubling down. So.
Very cool. Unlike, a little bit like a GoFundMe, where the money doesn't really start happening until you reach your mark. I was delighted / a bit of FOMO to find out that you reached your mark and they were going to begin paying their very generous interest rates to those of us that invested. And I was like, I should have invested more.
Well, there may be another opportunity. You never know.
So tell us about your vision for the club, and I think especially membership has always played a part in it. For those of you that don't know, Green Room launched with a membership concept that through their really excellent streaming capabilities, members could take advantage of getting into the portal and being able to watch any show, whether they were here in person or whether they paid individually for a ticket or not. And I think, in my impression, you did pretty well in getting some initial membership. How is that changing, and what are you looking for in the next year?
Well, our membership has been part of the initial business operations, where we thought during COVID we can't be live and in person and have an audience, so we'll connect our musicians and artists to the community through live stream. So that was how we initially started, and now and moving forward, we're really focused on getting people in the doors, because that's what's going to keep us community oriented and keeping us here and keeping us thriving. It's interesting, you actually mentioned shortest commute ever. My bio and my history is I have been in Eldorado County since 1978 when I was 4 years old. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school. I've lived here all that time. I moved away and came back, just like Summer and Kelly did. And my husband and I have built our home here, and we literally live 8 minutes from here, just outside the city limits of Placerville. I think it's really important to point that out, because we are community-based, we're family-oriented, we're women-owned. It's, everything that you want to check the box of a business that's brand new in a community that, we're trying to build this just like Cosmic was. We're very similar too. And it's a struggle, especially with businesses and changing and Main Street and everything that goes along with that.
Yeah, you've been very creative in, I think, trying to create different models for getting people in the door. So it's not just a nightclub. There's painting classes and vino. There's been sound healings. There's been Myrtle Tree Arts, our own company founded with my wife, Amira Godwin, has presented authors from San Francisco, like Leslie Kirk Campbell. How do you see that in terms of bringing all kinds of cultural events and opening them up to the community as part of your mission?
Well, it's just that. It is part of our mission. We have a stage, and we built the stage to use it. And yes, we have live music almost 7 days a week, but we have the opportunity to do these sorts of things during the day. We have the opportunity to have nonprofits in this room for lunch and learn or a corporate meeting or whatever the case may be. We have a screen back here. We're not just here for one thing. We're here for the community. We're here to be in a performance and event center. And part of that is really important with staying all ages. And with our investment funds, we have invested in a new Type 90 license that does allow us to remain all ages and be a performance and event venue, which is what we set out to be.
Yeah, awesome. I left out things like Chamber of Commerce events or Miners on Main or weddings, right? Didn't I come through here a few weeks ago and there was an Irish wedding going on?
We've had an Irish wake. We've had We have had a wedding ceremony. We've had baby showers. We've had celebrations of life. We've had, like I said, sound healing sessions. This is essentially your life in a bubble. And it's kind of everything I love. It's live music, it's sound healing, it's art, and most importantly, it's supporting the community and what our community wants. And I've said many a times, your politics and your beliefs and all of those things stop at the door. You come in here to have a good time and experience what we've created. This is my living room. There's no place for fighting about politics or any of those sorts of things. We just need to be here and enjoy what we've created together.
Wonderful. I'm going to put in a group plug for First Tuesdays starting October. Myrtle Tree Arts is going to present with the Green Room a downtown mixer. And for a while, we're going to just focus on nonprofits. So the first one will be Save the Graves, presenting what they're doing. And we want to reach out to the community and invite anyone involved with nonprofits or who might want to get involved with nonprofits to come down and just mix. So, this is a space that's available to do things like that. Yeah. So let's ask you this. What can the community do to support Club Green Room more?
Show up. Be here. Be aware of what's going on. Go to the website. Become a member. Make a tax-deductible donation through the Arts Council. This is not a for-profit endeavor. This is someone who's grown up and born and raised here and saw an opportunity to create something, and I'm doing it. So I really want people to listen so we can stay around.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have said on this show, and will continue to say, that when we left our place out in Pleasant Valley due to proximity to the wildfires, and really considered where we might relocate to, it was places like the Bookery and Club Green Room that just filled me up and made me really clear on the decision to stay in Placerville. Jennifer Ty, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Paul.
Placertopia Live, coming to you from Club Green Room in Placerville, California. We are here before a studio audience, one of our best audiences yet. Thanks for giving yourselves a round for coming out. And we had the vision of doing a lunchtime use of the Green Room, a live podcast, and we're streaming on Green Room YouTube and on Placertopia Instagram, and we follow up on Buzzsprout with the audio portion. And we do have a kind of underlying theme going on here without having stated it overtly. We've had so far 2 fine female business owners, and this is another one. Adrienne Beatty runs Panic and Swoon on Main Street, easily the hippest boutique. As far as I know, the only boutique where you can get a votive candle with Robert Smith from The Cure on it. She's going to entertain us with some of her music, some new music, and then we're going to talk to her for a minute. Adrienne Beatty.
I think it's also the theme of equinox. That is today or tomorrow. I just realized sitting over there, and I wasn't even thinking. I mean, I knew it was September, and the song I'm about to play is about this time of year, but I didn't realize it was literally going to be on the equinox, which this song is also very much about.
as we love to call her, 80 Beatty, which is, A-D-I-E. Occasionally she's Adri Beatty. And sometimes she's 80 Beatty, spelled 80 Beatty. Because her shop, Panic and Swoon, does definitely represent some vibes from the 80s, for sure. Is that a thing for you?
It's kind of a weird thing, but yeah.
What do you mean weird?
I don't know. When it was the 80s and I was like 13, I was like, this decade seems so much about me. I don't know. So I have like a weird kind of awkward tween feel about the 80s, but I do like them. I'm sort of a late 80s and then Robert Smith into the 90s kind of girl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shop definitely, if you haven't been there, has plenty of 80s and 90s. And also, though, Adrian sells vinyl there, and I have discovered new artists that I wasn't even aware of on vinyl there. So your taste didn't stop back in the 80s.
Well, I hope it improved.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like my shop is all about, my taste, and I hope other people like some of the same things I like, but it's been a weird balance of trying to follow trends a little bit. I don't want to do that too much. I really want to stay more, I feel like I've been there 6.5 years, and my goal is to get increasingly authentic. Because at first I was buying some kitschy stuff that I would never have in my own house. And now I'm like, you know what? The teenagers and I are right on par with each other. So I'm just going to go full speed ahead with all the goth things right now and all the grunge and the punk things and the horror things. And it seems to be working out.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I was over this weekend, and speaking of which, the tweens are representing in your shop. Like, I've noticed lots of young kids just heading for your shop. So.
Yep, they like
And
it.
and you have one at home too, right? So, on our theme of families and female business owners who might have left the area and came back to raise their family here, or in your case, single working moms. Yeah. Anything to share about that?
I have a 10-year-old. He's really great. He has 2 musician parents, so that's his fate. But I spent a lot of time in another small town that I really loved, which is Nevada City, Grass Valley area. And yeah, I really love pine trees and being close to hikes without any cell reception. And the river really is the biggest selling point in my heart for this whole region. But yeah, I came back to Placerville because I thought it needed me. I'm like, this town needs more, a little bit of more progressive everything, just thinking outside the box, coming from having visited other countries around the world and not just been here one's whole life. And I knew Main Street was a perfect place to open a sort of a business that in a town that would benefit from such a business. So a lot of the things I sell really have some heart behind them, just like Green Room does. And honestly, we have our Main Street in this like kick up your heels old, gold dust town has quite a few women owners. I mean, it might actually be the majority. It's pretty interesting that that's the way it is. So I hope it continues.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, empowering.
Everything we can do to support it. 80, let's talk about your music a little bit. I am what's that word? Unrepentant fan of your songwriting. And I've recently been describing some of your music as in the genre Victorian indie. Does that suit you?
I absolutely love it. Yes, I'll take it.
So that last song was not in that category, but
No.
Are these some new songs you're sharing with us? What's up?
Yeah, so the next one that I'll play today also isn't really so much in that category. I really love an old, slightly out of tune piano and, you know, a cabaret feel. So, but I also love, I don't know, learning a lot. Like I'm just getting into learning to hook up with MIDI and all of those fun things. So I love the digital technology that is available as well. But in my heart, the heart of the music really is late 1800s, early 1900s. I sort of have a fascination with ragtime, and there's a lot of that evident in my shop because I sell a lot of reproductions of the old sheet music that was so beautiful from back then. Every single song was had an illustration that went out with it, and the original recording industry was Tin Pan Alley and people peddling sheet music because getting out to an actual cabaret, if you're in the middle of Missouri, wasn't going to happen, so everyone played music. That's what they had, pianos, and they had their banjos and their whatever instrument that they loved, and they would just gather together, pre-radio, pretty much pre-photography. And I have a fascination with that, and I feel like that's, I don't know, there's a few songs that really emanate that feeling that I've written.
Yeah. You just, I think, attended a ragtime festival in one of the nearby Gold Rush communities. Can you tell us a little what you took away there?
Yeah, it was the Sutter Creek Ragtime Festival. It happens every August. It was absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend getting a one-day pass or even just a ticket to one of the events. It's not that expensive. I got to see Charlie Chaplin in The Kid with presented by a live piano player. And actually, Jen, here at the Green Room, has given the thumbs up for maybe a silent movie with a live piano player to happen here. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yay, the crowd.
It's the opposite of TikTok.
Goes wild. Yeah, exactly. Steer us far away from MIDI.
But it's oddly very engaging to teenagers, probably
Yeah.
because they're so not used to such a
Yeah, we have a friend from New York, John LaBarbera, who creates original orchestral scores for Italian films that were pre-audio. So these films never had any score, and you get to create a new score for it. And I was really inspired by that kind of thing. So Adrian is going to be back in the second half of the program. Thanks for talking with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
This
for
is
your
wonderful.
music. So what about this interstitial music? This one is by myself and Robert Uriendal, the Estonian composer, guitarist. And most of our interstitial music can be found on newdogrecords.com, which is, New Dog is more or less my name spelled backwards, and it's a label that I've run since 1996. And at one time had distribution through Warner Brothers, previous to the Spotify devolution. But our material can be found on Bandcamp and Spotify and newdogrecords.com. So we have gone from one Beatty to another, as tends to happen on Main Street, Placerville. Please welcome from the Bookery, Heather Spring Beatty.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everybody.
Heather Beatty Spring. Heather
Yeah.
Coelho Beatty Spring. Heather is here to show us, share some great reads. The Bookery, of course, a nearly 40-year-old institution here in Placerville.
Over 40.
Over 40
Yeah.
years, okay. Filled with incredible finds and a literally mazing an amazing because it is actually a maze. And Heather's going to share with us some good stuff to look for and read. What do you got?
All right. Hi, Paul. So actually, what you just said fits in perfectly with what I want to talk about because I started thinking about what books I wanted to share today. I knew there was loosely like a women theme, but I don't read business books, but I read a lot of women writers, so I thought that's almost like too broad. So what I was thinking about, I'm back in the classroom teaching a class. I teach part-time for the local college, and this is the first time I've been back in the classroom since the shutdown in 2020. I've been teaching online, so it's really invigorating to be back in the classroom and with students face-to-face. And one of the things I share with the students that I think is so important when we're taking a class, whether we're kids or college age or anybody, is that we can relate things from that class that we're talking about in class time with our real life, and we make connections, right? That's the only thing that keeps it interesting. And I might be alone here, but I think that class should be fun and interesting. And I tell them, like, our goal is actually to have fun in this classroom. So anyway, and it can't be fun unless you're paying attention enough that you get something out of it that you can relate to your regular life. So making connections is super important to me, and I actually talk to my kids about it all the time because it's kind of cool. I asked Lucy, my daughter who's in 6th grade, on the way over here, when did you first start learning about making text-to-text connections? They call it that in school. And she said she thinks between 2nd and 3rd grade. And so that's where you're reading along, and this is what I love as a bookstore owner and a book person. You're reading along and you're thinking about another book you read, or it could be a film you saw, or a work of art you saw, or something you experienced in personal life, and that's when the magic happens to me. Like, those are little synchronicities, although they're beyond synchronicities, that's kind of the wrong word. They're just connections, and they make you think about it differently, and you can see it kind of metaphorically, and you see the big picture in a new way. So as you can see, I brought a huge stack of books today because I started thinking about that, and I call it going down the bookish rabbit hole, like in my mind, because it happens to me all the time when I'm reading that I go down a rabbit hole and I remember something else I read, or I encounter something later that reminds me of this. And it also has to do with subject matter, like people who write about seemingly disparate subjects but relate them. And this comes into play in my classroom all the time because it's really important as an academic person in any way, not in any necessarily formal way, but just if you want to be a thinker, to be able to kind of complicate any topic and relate it to other things. So it's all connected to me. So I was thinking about a writer, and I thought about Rebecca Solnit. I don't know if anybody's familiar with her, but she's a fantastic essayist, obviously female writer, out of Northern California. She was born, I think, in Marin County, but lived in San Francisco, and now she's traveled all over. And she has a lot of books. She writes on everything. In fact, and this is kind of apropos to today's discussion, she's the one who coined the term mansplain. Yeah, it comes from her book, Men Explain Things to Me.
Oh, I would like
Short
to
little
explain a few things to her, actually.
Jump right in
For
here.
example, mansplaining. That's when a man explains how things are.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And Darren and I actually had the chance to go see her talk live in Point Reyes, and it was so cool. She talked about one of her books that I want to bring up in a minute. If I have time, I have so many things I want to talk about. I get excited about books. And anyway, I remember at the end, an audience member asked a really odd question that was, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it was sort of off-putting. It almost felt a little aggressive in tone. It was a male audience member. He wasn't mansplaining, but he was like trying to push it in a weird way. And she totally just like railroaded over it and was like, she's a powerful woman. So anyway, it was really great to see her live. And that was on my mind as I was thinking about today. So I thought about, I'm pretty sure this is the first book of hers I came across. It's called A Field Guide to Getting Lost. Take a look.
Hold it for a sec.
Hold it for a sec.
You got a light on it? No, okay. Go ahead.
Okay,
Tell us.
good, because I want to read a quote from it. So this book got me excited from the get-go because she says here, she's talking about giving a workshop, and she says, a student came in bearing a quote from what she said was the pre-Socratic philosopher Meno. It read, how will you go about finding that thing the nature of which is totally unknown to you? I love that quote, and that quote kind of guides this book. So if you think about that for a minute, and I know it's hard sometimes to verbally picture, like I'm reading it, and it makes it a little easier. But she's saying, how do you go out and look for the thing that could change your life that you don't even know exists yet? And And that's why this book is about getting lost in a way. It's about allowing ourselves the freedom to get lost. And she, in that cool way she has of making interesting connections, she explores the idea of getting lost in many different ways. Like there's a whole chapter on blues music. There's a chapter about growing up or having her young adulthood in San Francisco and her best friend and kind of the wild times they had. So some of it's like rooted in her experience. Others is just observational. Totally beautiful book. And then the next one I read, and that idea of getting lost to me has to do with those connections. I start thinking in terms of like a mental map of the things you've read and the things you love and the things you're passionate about thinking about. And I think there's this term psychogeography. Have you heard of that? Okay, I only know it a little bit from reading Robert McFarlane. That's my next like map endeavor, is to learn more about it, because I think it kind of describes what mentally happens to us when we're making the connections I'm talking about. So the next book I read by her was called Wanderlust, and this one is specifically about walking. And it's really cool because there's a lot of famous walkers, and I've also read a lot of Robert McFarlane, a lot of men who are walkers. And there's not as many women who write about walking. Thoreau is one of our famous Americans who I also love to read everything by
Not a
Thoreau.
woman at that time.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, in this book, she writes about walking with all these different connections, like the flaneurs of Paris and, you know, the different approaches that people have taken historically to walking and how it can root you to your landscape, and the way thinking itself is aligned with walking, which is a subject I'm really interested in. And that's what Thoreau believed.
Yeah, I just going to interrupt there for a sec. That
Please
term
do.
flaneur, which I had forgotten. So I just had a aha, because I'm a big fan of the Portuguese author Fernando Pessoa, and he talks about flaneurs. And, you know, this term, if I'm not mistaken, it's sort of somebody who, well, to give it another French term, a little bit like a bon vivant, like someone who just sort of ambles around a town or a city, chatting with inhabitants, dropping in for a tapas or a drink or this kind of idea. Is that right?
Absolutely. And then you can discover things usually it's associated with an urban landscape. It has a lot to do with poking in a doorway and you never know what you'll see or what art you might see or who you'll meet. So I love it because I also associate it with the life of the mind, and that I love the word amble, because to me, as you read or you experience cultural things, your mind is ambling and you're making that psychogeographic map in a way, you know, always adding to it. Yeah.
Fantastic. We just, I'm a flaneur myself, so I'll say we just visited another really great small town about the same size as Placerville, Port Townsend, Washington. And while my wife was glued to her camera and her computer and her sketch pad, I was flaneuring a lot of the time. I was just hitting the streets and talking to people and grabbing a hot dog and just like, it's something I really love. It's how I experience the world, actually.
And I think it's a really good way to get deeply into a place. And I don't think a lot of people allow ourselves enough time to do that. And actually, doing it on vacation is the point of one of these books. I think it might be in this one, where we kind of allot that time. And it's why part of the reason we love our vacation time so much is that we give ourselves extra time to just flaneur, or to walk, to explore. Do I have a couple more minutes? I want to read you a quote from here. So in this book about walking, she also talks about labyrinths. And if you've ever walked a labyrinth, we have a fantastic one in Georgetown called the Abode of Peace Labyrinth. Highly recommend it. She says here, let me see if I can find the right part, that at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, the labyrinth was commissioned by Cathedral Canon Lauren Artress, whose book I've read and I brought here, so here's my connections. In 1991, labyrinths, she writes, are usually in the form of a circle with a meandering but purposeful path from the edge to the center and back out again. Each one only has one path, and once we make the choice to enter it, the path becomes a metaphor for our journey through life. So it just so happens, this is my own perspective on those connections made, that we have started going to that labyrinth once a season. So we went in winter in January, and then we went in the spring, went in the summer, and our next one will be in the fall. That labyrinth in Georgetown, and I've gotten interested in labyrinths this year. and read this Labyrinth book. So this is part of the way that the world and the connections kind of become your reality in the way that I think is so cool. So that's another one I recommend by this. She's kind of like the guru of labyrinths, if you're interested in that at all, Lauren Artress. And what she talks about here, and Rebecca Solnit kind of echoes this, is how a labyrinth has one central path, or one unique path that leads to the center, but it's not a maze, and a lot of people confuse that with little wrong ends and turns into dead ends, and you can take the wrong path. A labyrinth has a certain center. So the cool thing to me, as it applies to the idea of like getting lost, is that sometimes you feel like you're so far away you'll never get to the center. Other times you're right by the center, but you're not in it yet. So you feel kind of lost, but you're never actually lost. And I think that's the point at the heart of a lot of what Rebecca Solnit writes about, is that when we feel lost, we always have ourselves, if we can center ourselves, as almost like a guide. And it's kind of like this inner journey too. So in your flanoring through...
That is a world. You've opened up a psychogeography for me. I was
Yay.
while you were saying that paragraph, I was in Venice. I was back in Port Townsend, which actually has a remarkable number of public paths between all the neighborhoods. And there's the Quimber central set. It's an open land preserve with tons of paths that just keep bifurcating and lead to different neighborhoods. And for whatever reason, it's like people don't mind. The element of private property with public walking is really well integrated, which I only understood from McFarlane's books about England, and that in England... Yeah, say something about that.
Yeah, you need like a private right-of-way, and the landowner has to approve it, and there's all kinds of mitigation going on even right now in England.
Oh, okay, but what I thought, though, that at least in England, public walking is considered an important thing.
Oh, yeah.
And there was this structure of like every farm had to have pass-through paths. We're going to talk in a few minutes with Aidan McGuire, and he actually is from Morecambe, which has this very famous, it's in the McFarlane, The Old Ways.
Oh, I
is
love that
Morecambe,
book.
and
Yep.
this famous, I forget, he'll have to tell us what the name of that path is, but it's, well, anyway, you see, we've gone down a psychogeographic rabbit hole. I think we're going to have to rein it in. And,
That's fine.
And to do so,
Can we talk
Heather,
about my kids'
yeah,
book?
I want
Okay.
you to talk about
Okay.
a kid's book,
I
sure.
brought a kid's book too. I will mention that Robert McFarlane is one of Rebecca Solnit's best friends, so that's another cool connection. Anyway, so I was thinking about a kid's book I could recommend, and this is Hilda and the Mountain King. We sell this at Bookery. The Hilda series is a Netflix show now too. And in this particular one, she gets lost in another dimension, so it reminded me of my theme of like getting lost. And the coolest thing, I just read it the other night, and there's a show on TV of it too. All kids love it. Again, this is like a perfect tween, a little before, a little after. Boys, girls, they all love the Hilda stories. She goes to the troll world, and she gets stuck there, so she's lost in the troll world. And the person who has to rescue her, and the connection that's most important in this story, is her mother. So it kind of, once I reread it just the night before last, I was like, that is so perfect to share when I'm talking about books by women and this idea of being lost, which has a bit of a feminine feel to me. And then there's this like mother-daughter relationship, not just between Hilda and her mother that are human, but also a troll mother and a little troll baby. So it's just the coolest in the world. And they have to kind of like find peace between the realms in a way. To get back to their respective families. Yeah.
Well,
so.
you're going to have to leave that one with me because, you know, I'm like one of this part of this generation that loves to read but has wound up reading a lot of graphic novels because they're just
so
a little easier on the eyes and the brain late at night reading in bed. And so if graphic novels are too complex for you, kids' books.
Totally. And there's a lot of great adult graphic novels.
Awesome. Heather Spring Beatty from the Bookery.
Thank you. Thank you so
We're having a really fun show. I'm feeling very conversational. So, coming back, from Adrian to Aiden. Half the time I want to text Aiden, I get Adrian in my phone and vice versa. And this is a regular segment like the Bookery Reads. This is Outdoors with Aiden. Please welcome to Placertopia Live, Aiden McGuire. Raise that up just a little bit, I think. So Aiden is a regular guest on the show, and he's sharing with us his love of the Gold Country, the Sierra foothills. He is an outdoorsman of great passion. He originally came to the area as a rock climber. As I understand it, there are several first ascents credited to him, and he's gotten to name some first ascents as a rock climber in the area. He's also a kayaker. As we learned on last program, he showed us the American River C to G, the Coloma to Greenwood Run. What do you got for us today, Aiden?
Well, Paul, we're actually going to talk climbing today. So we're actually, okay.
Yep.
Is that,
Nope.
okay.
Here we go. More. Remind me to speak about
Okay.
Girls' Night,
Oh,
y'all.
all right. So I'm not going to talk about Girls' Night.
Oh, sorry. Bumped.
And
Go ahead.
perhaps,
What do you got?
The names between Adrian and Adrian explains a couple
Yeah,
of things
it
on those
does.
texts. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, today we're going to talk about Lover's Leap. And what I'd like to do is talk about Lover's Leap and talk about it from a non-climber's and a climber's perspective, and maybe give a plug for the upcoming exhibit.
Great. Okay, Lover's Leap.
Lover's
For those
Leap.
of us that don't know how to
Yeah.
find it, where do we go?
So Lover's Leap is a impressive rock formation that is on the Highway 50 corridor in Strawberry. It is a really impressive piece of granite being the main walls of Yosemite and most of the High Sierras. And it was carved out millions of years ago by the South Fork of the American River. And what it left is a formation that's about 1,000 feet tall and about 3/4 of a mile long, and very steep and daunting and sheer in most places. And it is a great place to go rock climbing, and a very popular place for rock climbing. And I'd like to talk about a specific climb also when we go into this. But also a great place and a historical place from an interesting geological place too.
Wow. Okay. Should we start with, where should we start?
Well, geology, let's go
bottom.
chronologically, I suppose, right?
Okay, chronologically.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
works. So anyway, it was carved out by the American River. It's granite. What's also sort of unique about Lover's Leap is that if you look at it, it almost looks corrugated in that there is countless horizontal, intrusive quartzite dikes, which is sort of a geological term. I don't know that much about it, but what it means is there's areas of harder rock that run through it horizontally, and in the right light, it almost gives it sort of a corrugated or stair-stepped appearance. And those areas tend not to erode as quickly. And so as the formation has formed, you have all of these corrugations or these dikes that provide opportunities for handholds and footholds, which makes it such a popular place for rock climbing because you can ascend Lover's Leap by probably 150 different ways. Routes.
Wow. How
Yeah.
many of those have you attempted?
Maybe 100?
For real?
Yeah, I've done everything I can do there that's not too hard or isn't, well, maybe more, I don't know. I've probably done most everything there, I think, except things that are too hard to be done, including all of the obscure routes that are in the process of falling down. Historically, it's actually quite interesting. Perhaps we could talk about non-climbers and what they can get out of going to Lover's Leap.
Yeah, I'm going to say one thing
Yes, please.
quickly, which is that it's a terrific place to snowshoe, actually. Snowshoes can
Yeah,
be had
yeah.
on the internet pretty reasonably these days.
Yeah.
And we picked up a few pair, and when it snows around here, that's a sure thing, and it's a really great, easy trail
Yeah.
to get in there. And just,
Yeah.
you don't go up the climb, but you see the climb, and a crystal clear,
Yeah.
sunny day. It's magnificent.
Yeah, it's not unlike walking to the base of El Capitan or something. It's a huge piece of rock. And for non-climbers, it's very easy to park in the campground and head your way up the trail. The trail, as you're going up there, really is a dry creek bed. It's in spring, there's even a bit of a stream through there, and in winter, you can snowshoe through there. In the summer, you're walking up a dry creek bed, but but it's actually the old historic Pony Express Trail. And as you start at the beginning of it, after you leave the campground, you go past a very big rock called Monk Rock, which is where the wagon train used to stop, and there's a particular historical monument there. As you go further up the trail, you're looking at these expansive formation that just gets bigger as you go further up, as you're looking at it. If you look down, what's interesting is you'll see these dynamite spots where they blow up rocks to enable the wagon trains to be able to get up and down. And so it's quite interesting from a historical perspective. If you continue past Lover's Leap, you get to a beautiful place where you can picnic and hang out, where the creek pours over these rocks in this open area. It's really beautiful. I think what's really interesting, if you're a little bit more adventurous, but you don't need to be particularly talented at hiking or anything, is you go past Lover's Leap, the main climbing area, and you can take what's called a climber's trail. And a climber's trail is the way that the climbers come back down off of all the climbs. And it's a well-established trail that will take you all the way up. It's not dangerous. You're not close to the edge. And it'll take you all the way up on top of Lover's Leap, where you can get, above the east wall in particular, you can get these beautiful views looking right down the sheer face, and often see people climbing back up towards you. And it's safe to be able to go do that.
This is pretty cool. I'm just thinking that maybe there should be a book that comes out of this, like Outdoors with Aiden, and it could be a year-round Sierra Foothills adventure book, because these are such great tips.
Yeah, I got an adventure for every day pretty well. But also, as you go up on the east wall, the Caldor fire did go through there, but it didn't destroy it. Maybe a third of the stuff got burnt up. On the top of the east wall, which is the far left wall, if you're looking at Lover's Leap, and it's a sheer 400-foot wall, there's actually beautiful old-growth redwood trees on top of that, and a creek that runs through there, and it's pretty a magical area. If you continue all the way to the very tip-top of the leap, there's an amazing area that's sort of gravelly that would make the most billion-dollar view picnic area and give you expansive views looking all the way west towards, down the Highway 50 corridor. And then you can either come back the same way, or you can go all the way over and come back out at the 42-mile tract. And this is a hike that, anybody that's just, hikes up in the Sierras from time to time on uneven trails can do. It's not a technical hike. You don't need climbing gear. You just need to have some decent footwear and some sunblock and a sandwich and some water.
Really good.
Yeah.
So there's the novice approaches. Why don't we seg into some of your expert ideas? For most of us, this is going to be pure armchair travel, but tell us about some rock climbing.
Well, I think, one of the great things about Lover's Leap is that even armchair potential rock climbers could perhaps go up there, because Lover's Leap is renowned for its impressive faces and its quartzite dikes, but it's also renowned for having easy and moderate climbs. Easy meaning like somebody with no climbing experience that was in reasonably decent shape could probably use a guide service and actually ascend those routes quite safely. The routes vary from about, it's 1,000 feet tall, and some of those routes are probably 600, 700, close to vertical feet up. There's routes all over the place, and on any given day, on a weekend especially, you'll see people from all over the region. You'll see climbers from Placerville, El Dorado County, Davis, Sacramento, the Bay Area, Reno, South Lake Tahoe. In the parking lot, you'll see cars from every state in the nation, and it's not unusual at all to hear accents from Germany, Canada, France, wherever, Japan, because it really is a destination place. And it's mainly because there are these long, what we call multi-pitch, meaning multi-rope length routes that are long, beautiful, but protect well. They're safe, and they're not really a super hard level. So there's a lot of climbers that aren't necessarily gung-ho climbers that will climb 2 or 3 times a year, but they can safely climb at a lot of spots at Lover's Leap.
So I think it would be important to maybe give a plug for the store there at Strawberry, right? Because they've been really long, staunch supporters of climbing in the region. Can you? And if someone's coming into the area and wants to get equipped or get a guide, or is that a?
Yeah, 2 plugs, I guess. The store is amazing. It's run by an old friend of mine, Squirrel. And I don't know Squirrel's. Nobody knows Squirrel's real name, not even his wife. He's just Squirrel. Squirrel's been out climbing, and he ran a climbing gym in Davis years ago. And he's turned that place into like a social center. So you can go there after climbing or before climbing and find out where to go, or you can go afterwards and go and have a beer or soda and sit outside and squirrel will talk your ear off and talk roots all day long. So he's awesome, and the place is great, and I've always wanted to support that place. He has climbing gear that he sells. And then the other place is a friend of mine, Petch, who runs Lover's Leap Guides. And he has a guide service that he's run for several years that has safely taken hundreds of people up Lover's Leap. And probably, I don't know, a half day, I think, is probably a couple $100, and you have all the equipment, and you can safely do any one of these 400 or 500 foot ascents and enjoy real rock climbing. Even you, Paul, you could go up there with Petch.
Even me. So I should tell you, just as Aiden got me into do solo kayaking in the American River, he has been inviting me to just, and you can tell them whether this is a trick or not, but he said to me several times in the last few months, you know, we're going to go climb over at Sugarloaf. Why don't you just show up and you can just watch us and hang out? And I just get this idea that maybe it's a trick.
Yeah, well, I will be bringing assistants to kind of tie you down, put the rope around you, force shoes onto you, and drag you up something. I probably will do that, actually.
I kind of wondered.
I would like to talk about one particular climb, since we have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
I'm particularly fond of and is a classic of Lover's Leap. I mean, there's probably 150 ways to go up that, but one of the most famous is something called Corrugation Corner. And Corrugation Corner is 5'7", which actually makes it a fairly easy climb, but it has its own challenges. It goes to the very top of the formation, but to get there, to get to the start of the climb, you have to go probably 400 feet up off the ground already. So you go up a boulder field, and then you come across what's called the main ledge, which from the ground looks like a ridiculously skinny ledge halfway up the cliff face. But when you get there, it's probably about a 6-foot wide sidewalk. I mean, you wouldn't want to fall off the sidewalk. You'd probably fall a couple hundred feet, but nobody does. And you get to the base of this climb, and the climb takes this big corner system that you can see from the road as you drive past Lover's Leap, a big corner system facing west. It goes up this corner system for about 150 feet, protects well, using a crack in the back of the corner. And then you get to the second pitches, which is perhaps the most famous, which is what in climbing is called an arête. An arête, if you think of like a skyscraper, and you think about the two sides of it coming out to a corner, an arête is that corner, that outward corner. And the climb goes right up the arête. It's steep, and you're climbing sometimes with hands and feet on both sides of this arête. Even though you're only a couple of hundred feet from where you started, the fact is you're already 400 feet before you even get off the ground. And it makes it appear that you're probably 600 feet off the ground on the outside edge of a skyscraper as you go up. And then further up, it goes to easier climbing, but just like a 80-degree stair step up the wild, steep formation where you're belaying your partner. And at the very end, you come out on the very top, that little beautiful oasis on the very top of Lover's Leap. So that's a spectacular climb in particular that I certainly recommend. And honestly, if you had a guide and you were decently fit, you could hire somebody to take you up it. It's not that difficult.
Fantastic. So Aiden, is there a time of year when we're not going to go climbing there, or do you guys climb right through the winter season?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Lover's Leap, there's a lot of different climbing areas, and we kind of rotate through them depending on the season. Lover's Leap is generally a summer spot because it faces north. So you can get there in probably April, and we climb there through till probably October. But once the winter truly sets in, it's usually a bit snowy. Although there is actually ice climbing that forms where some water freezes. Occasionally, some years, people go ice climbing there, but that's not sort of the famous part. Most of the time, it's a spring, summer, fall area. Yep.
Really good.
Yeah.
Well, for those of us that are, shall we call ourselves Netflix climbers, and have been enjoying all these amazing climbing films that have been coming out, right?
Sure.
You know, we were only seeing some of the really icy and snowy climbing experiences. So, but maybe as the winter comes on, you'll treat us to a little bit of a primer on ice climbing or something like that, if you've done any, or we could have
Not
Tony
much.
Valdez on,
Yeah,
or
there
some
you go. There you go.
extra guest.
Yeah.
So, Aiden, I really want to thank you for coming back on the show, and we hope you'll be with us every month with a new
Yeah.
adventure.
Can I mention one thing,
Yeah,
by
please
the way?
do. You've
If
got
you- if-
22
if you
seconds
haven't
by your
already
own
met
count.
mentioned it, but there is an exhibit coming up
Oh.
on climbing in El Dorado County. And it'll be starting, I think, in mid-November, I believe, and will run for about 6 weeks. And it's going to be great because El Dorado County climbing is sensational, and it's like one of the best places in the country, and most people around here don't actually realize that. And so we're going to try to focus on that. Oh, that's me telling me my 15
Right.
minutes is up.
So this is going to be a climbing art show
Yeah.
at the Switchboard Gallery
Yeah.
from El Dorado Arts and Culture, or I should say Arts and Culture El Dorado. And they've invited you and Charlie Downs, and who else is helping figure out what's on that show?
A bunch of people.
Yeah.
There's several people that we're trying to get involved in it, that
Yeah.
are submitting some photographs and different types of work. And there's going to be some interviews and some narrative that's going on with climbers being interviewed and so forth. I was just out a couple of days ago photographing a really amazing climbing friend of mine, Terry. She's a woman, and she climbs really hard. And we made her wear a red T-shirt so she could pick out. And I got some great photographs, and hopefully she'll be on the climbing exhibit too. But it should be
Thank
great.
you for mentioning that. And speaking of Terry, a woman, and Arts and Culture El Dorado, Terry Lamonchek will be our featured guest next show on
All right.
October 18th. Ada McGuire, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Is that a pop-up? Is anyone popping up? Love is the last word. Okay, cool. Do you want to do, I could use a bio break if we put Adrian on first. Love is the only love. 80, great. Okay, what a fun show. She'll introduce her own song. Okay. Well, okay, I'll do a girls' night plug while we wait for Hop Up. All right, we're back, and Placertopia Live. I'm Paul Godwin. We're here at the Green Room Social Club. It's September 20th. And I know it's a timely show. I just want to promote that this coming weekend, the Main Street Collective, a band that formed from great musicians who work and live around Main Street, will be performing Girls' Night as our third Saturday art walk. Speaking of art walk, we have Ruth Michelson here tonight from Placerville Art Gallery, and they are have been promoting the third Saturday art walks, and it's a beautiful night in town where people come early, like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and they walk around and visit all the shops. And then the theme is Flower Power Girls Night. And so the Main Street Collective is going to feature great women artists, cover songs from the Supremes, Erykah Badu, to Fleetwood Mac, and Portishead, and Garbage, and Sinead O'Connor, of course, who Aidan McGuire and I are the two biggest Sinead O'Connor fans in Placerville. So it was a great loss losing her this year. But anyway, Saturday evening we'll have Vices to Virtues opening the show, and a lot of Haley, Nicole Woodward, and May Flores, and Aaron Faria have been putting together this amazing show. So Saturday evening here at the Green Room at 7, and it will include our returning musical artist, Adrian Beatty.
This song is, it's about really not letting everyone else's gaze affect you and being courageous in your own way without having to care what other people think. That's one of the hardest things to do in this life. I'm working on it, and this song came to me recently, so it's pretty new. For my birthday, my mom got me this cool little MIDI pad. I'm learning how to use it, so let's hope it works out.
Adrian Beatty. Adi, where can they find your work? But your Instagrams are incredibly entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
You're constantly playing songs on your Instagram.
I love to play songs.
Can they follow you there? What's
Instagram,
that?
Just on my piano at home. Yeah, it's Adri Beatty, ADRIEBEATTY.
All right, follow Adri.
If you hook to that,
Yeah.
it will hook you. You can check my bio or my profile and see the link to Panic and Swoon and follow me there.
So an audience question from one of our regulars, Randy Watkins. Where does the name Panic and Swoon come from?
Oh, Lordy. I saw you get up. So it was Christmas 2016. I opened in May 2017. And I arrived during one of those busy stagecoach Christmas afternoons where they're like driving the Christmas bell stagecoach around the alley and hooting and hollering. And that was finishing up, and there was a few people dispersing in costume. And in the back alley here, behind Public House, there were two older men, and I'm talking like, I don't know, 55, 60, quite handsome, in like fringed leather, no baseball caps, just like their long hair. They look like old sheriffs and Wild West characters or whatever. And I thought to myself, and then later wrote on Instagram, if men still dress this way, I'd be in a constant state of panic and sweat.
What a great tale. Now I know what to wear.
Kind of, and at that point, I'm like, that actually has a ring to it. Like, it might have been 1860s slang. I think I'm going to buy that website. And then didn't know what was going to happen with it, but it turned into my shop.
Fabulous. Victorian indie artist, Adri Beatty. Thanks for coming on the show. All right. Good. We're just heading into wrap up, and this has become a favorite segment of the show. This is our hop up section. So anyone who comes to our live audience and wants to hop up and get in the chair and promote an event or just ask a question or just chat with Paul, this is our co-producer from Kilton Cork Events, Russ Reyes.
Hey,
what do you
Paul.
got?
I got about a minute, so to wrap the show up. But just wanted to let everyone know, October 7th, coming up very soon, we're going to be doing the Oktoberfest. So much like last weekend, we're going to be closing off the street and bringing in some breweries, some wineries, food, obviously, arts. A lot of the vendors are going to be coming out again, and we're just going to have a great time.
So thank you, Russ.
Yeah.
Kilton Cork produces a lot of public events out here in town, and they do a really professional job. We just went through the block party event here, and it was the nicest one in years. It was, and I think we're on a good trend this fall. Oktoberfest will be really great, and Main Street Collective will be doing an event here that evening. We're calling October Floyd. So I think you don't have to use too much imagination to know what that's going to be.
I do want to call out that we are going to have 2 local bands performing at Oktoberfest this year. Because we've had a lot of people, they love the German music, but we're going to try something different this year. We're going to try some local acts, and we're going to have Red Dirt Ruckus. They're going to be taking the main stage, and then before them, we're going to have Born and Raised on stage as well. So
fantastic.
Yeah, so 2 cool local bands.
Yeah, these are good segues. Yeah. So I'm thanking Russ for co-producing the show and for telling me
Thanks,
I will produce the show, but we have to start next week. Back in August or July, he got us rolling. And also, we've got from Red Dirt Ruckus, Doug Neal on the board today doing our stream and our live audio. This gives me a chance to introduce what's coming up next month and to do our thank yous. So, next month, October 18th on Wednesday, Executive Director of Arts and Culture El Dorado, Terry Lamonchek, will be our lead guest. She'll be talking about the new art plan for Placerville, which has been a plan in the works for some time and pretty exciting for public art. We will also have, from Save the Graves, Mike Roberts. And from the Bookery, we're going to have Darren Coelho Spring, who is going to be reading Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven apropos, dare I say, apropos of Halloween, and probably giving us a couple of his Lovecraftian or otherwise spooky reads for the fall. Our musical guest will be none other than Jacob Mingle. So this is going to be a great show, October 18th. So, Placertopia Live is a production of Myrtle Tree Arts, an arts collaborative here in the Gold Country, myrtletreearts.com, and Kilt and Cork, presenting events and podcasting out here in Northern California. We would not be here without the generous sponsorship of Club Green Room. So, our associate producer is Rena Wakefield, without whom nothing would happen. I think I credited Doug, Russ, for Placertopia Live. I'm Paul Godwin. Howard. Thanks for coming.